Would you like to find an easy way to add color to your room to make it more interesting? Stay tuned. Hi everyone, I'm so glad you're here to hang out and talk about neat interior design topics. In this video, we're going to be using the design element of color, and actually just one facet of color, to make an easy fix to make a room more interesting. And we're going to be taking a look at the design principles of variety, emphasis, and repetition. So if that sounds kind of interesting to you, I'd love to have you hang out. And I want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. So let's get started. So in this video, we're focusing in on the design element of color and focusing in even more just on the facet of color value. So, which means just the lightness and darkness of a color. And when we just use that, when we use color in different variations of lighter versions and darker versions, right away our room is more interesting. And then we're going to be using the design principles of variety, emphasis, and repetition to help give us a framework of how we can use that color, the different variations of that color in a room to make it look even better. And, just a reminder that a design element really is just a component of a design. So color is one of those. And the design principles are almost like a guide, a framework to how we use those components in a room. So when we talk about the design principle of repetition, we can think of that in a really easy way of just repeating a color or another element in a room so that the room feels and looks connected. It creates, cohesiveness in the room. And then when we think about variety as another design principle, that's about making sure our room isn't blah. So making sure that it's interesting and, kind of a neat place that we want to be. And then emphasis is where we think about where we want something to grab our attention in the room. And sometimes it's just one area, and that's called a focal point, where, right away we can see that's the star of the room, star of the show. And then everything else in the room is almost like supporting that. Or sometimes there's maybe more than one focal point, depending on where you're standing or sitting in the room. So using variety, repetition, and also emphasis in a room is a wonderful way of creating a cohesive room. And the cool thing about color is a really easy way to do that. And in this video, we're just focusing in on lightness and darkness of color. So let's take a look at some examples of where this is playing out really well. So in this first room, right away, we can see repetition in play because the color blue is being repeated in that room. But the cool thing about that, it's not just the same lightness or darkness, the same value of that color. They're using that color in a deeper tone, but also in lighter tones. So the deepest tone is in the headboard, and then lighter tones in the throw pillows and maybe even on that beautiful bench. And using lighter and darker colors, we are repeating that color blue, but just in different versions. So it doesn't get boring. And, talk about variety. That's bringing variety to the room already just by simply using different lightness and darkness of a color already makes a room more interesting. And then let's talk about emphasis. Right away, we can see there's a focal point in this room, and that's that beautiful headboard. And a couple things are going on there. That's the darkest tone of that color blue used in that room. Plus, it's a large area of that color. And also, there's a lot of contrast going on because when you place a darker color next to a lighter color, right away it creates contrast, and right away our eyes go there and want to see more and notice that right away. So that's working really, really well. So I think using different variations, different lightness and darkness of colors in that room creates a really beautiful and wonderful space. this room, we can see right away there's this wonderful emphasis. It's grabbing our attention, that kitchen area. And we could say that's probably the focal point of the room. And why is that? Well, it's because they're using the deepest tone, the darkest blue in that area. And there's contrast again. It's next to, right next to some really light colors and creating a lot of contrast because there's a darker color next to a lighter color. Plus, there's a lot of space that's being set aside just for that darker color. So right away, there's this beautiful focal point in the room. But we can also say that color is repeated in the room in different variations, in different lighter tones, and maybe even some mid-tones in the area rug and throw pillows. And then we can also say there's some beautiful variety in the room because there are different lightnesses and darknesses of that blue tone in the room. So it's not boring. So, right away, things feel and look connected, and also, it looks kind of like a neat, inviting place that we would like to go visit. And then in this last example, we can see that there is a variety of lighter and darker tones of gray going on in this room. And just because of that, it gives this room nice variety. It makes it much more interesting rather than having everything be the same tone, the same mid-tone gray. And also, our eyes are drawn to that area rug. And it's the same reason we talked about in that kitchen and also in the bedroom, because that's where maybe one of the darker colors is used, the darker version of that color, as well as lighter color next to it, creating some contrast. And right away too, that's a big area that it's taking up. It takes up a lot of space. And so our eyes are drawn to that area of emphasis right away. And repeating that color throughout the room, just in lighter and darker versions, creates a really wonderful space. And our eyes are even noticing maybe there's even a second focal point, a second area of interest, which could be that back wall with that neat, wood feature back there. And also at the couch, because the couch looks like it has the lightest tone, almost like a crisp white. So that creates a lot of contrast. And so there's, our eyes are kind of bouncing around this room and, enjoying looking at these different areas. But then it's all connected because they're all starting out with that gray tone, but just using lighter and darker versions of that tone. So when you want to make a room look a little bit more interesting, just, add in different variations, different lighter and darker tones of a color, and that will already make it look more wonderful. So I'd love to hear if you use lighter and darker versions of one color in a room to make it look more interesting, and how you're doing that. So I'd love to hear about that and your design ideas around that topic. And take a moment in your day to see if you notice, lighter and darker versions of one color that you're using in a room or in your home, or even when you're out and about. And, how that kind of helps to liven things up and to create a more beautiful space. And I really want to thank you again for watching my videos. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you're doing well, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Check out my Interior Design Principles playlist to take a deeper dive into variety, repetition, and emphasis.